And welcome everyone to the QEM Heroes webinar series. I'm Christine Wood and I serve as the Assistant Program Director for the Heroes Fellows Program at QEM. And for more than 30 years, QEM has been a national catalyst for STEM education transformation and research capacity building. Currently, the QEM network serves nearly 900 colleges and universities and reaches more than 8,000 individuals nationwide. This webinar is part of the HEROES initiative. The HEROES program brings together former federal scientists to lend their expertise and support to the STEM research and education communities. Our fellows are here to provide tools and tips for navigating the funding landscape, developing STEM programs and partnerships, and improving talent retention in in-demand fields. We hope this series promotes engagement with our HEROES fellows and provides valuable resources to our participants. The webinar recordings and slides will be available in the QEM Resource Hub. And by attending this webinar, you will soon be added to the QEM network and granted access to the Resource Hub. And I am so proud to introduce our three extraordinary fellows today. Dr. Aprille Ericsson is a trailblazing aerospace engineer known for many firsts. She's the first Senate-confirmed presidential appointee as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Science and Technology, overseeing a $2 billion enterprise. She was also the first African-American woman to earn an engineering PhD while at NASA Goddard. A Brooklyn native, she earned her BS engineering from MIT and ME and PhDs from Howard University. Passionate about STEM advocacy, she mentors young minorities and women. Honored globally, Dr. Ericsson remains dedicated to advancing spaceflight and innovation. She continues to inspire future generations through education and leadership. And Dr. Yulia Goreva is a geochemist by training with a PhD from Caltech, specializing in earth and planetary sciences. She previously served as a scientist at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History and as a scientist and technologist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And Ken Wright retired from NASA after 40 years of federal service, where he most recently served as a senior policy advisor in the Office of Technology, Policy, and Strategy. Other roles during his career included director of the NASA Inventions and Contributions Board, executive director for the Science and Technology Partnerships Forum, and agency lead for innovation. Ken also served 2 years in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, where he led the National Science and Technology Council and lab to market activities. Career highlights include receiving NASA's Outstanding Leadership and Exceptional Service medals and being inducted into the Academy of Distinguished Alumni for Virginia Tech College of Industrial and Systems Engineering. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to our presenters today.
Thank you, Christine. And it's great to be here today with my esteemed colleagues. And we're going to talk to you a little bit today about NASA technology shortfalls and opportunities to enable future missions. And we hope that you just engage, and I think we'll have time for questions at the end of our presentation. Our agenda includes what are these NASA shortfalls? We're going to talk about those, but we want to start off to make sure that you know what these shortfalls are and how they're developed and how NASA is using these particular shortfalls. And shortfalls aren't something, as you can imagine, that stay the same shortfalls year after year. They're actually a process. So we'll kind of show you how they've evolved over the years and where the 2026 shortfalls are currently. And then talk a little bit about how we enable missions and how these shortfalls actually are enablers to achieving some of NASA's most aggressive missions, both in space science as well as lunar and Martian habitation and things like that. And then we'll introduce you to a tool called TechPort that handles a lot of the different technologies and technology development efforts at NASA, in addition to being linked into the shortfalls. And one of the key things we want you to take away today is also how the colleges and universities can use these shortfalls to influence their programs and look for opportunities with NASA. And then we'll end up with a few closing remarks. So what are shortfalls? When we talk about shortfalls, these are technology areas that have been identified by NASA, and it's not just NASA, but also a lot of the professionals and other entities around the world that are associated with achieving NASA's future missions and meet these future exploration, science, and mission needs. So as you can imagine, it's going to be very difficult for us to have permanent habitation on the moon. And there are a lot of things that are needed to enable that mission to actually happen. And these are some of the shortfalls that have been identified and prioritized that will help NASA achieve those types of missions. So, how are these shortfalls developed? Back in 2024, NASA's Space Technology Mission Directorate, often called STMD, kicked off this collaborative process to integrate the technical challenges to help guide NASA's space technology development and investment. So this was not just a NASA program. NASA actually put this out on the NASA website and said, "Hey, these are some of the missions that we're looking to achieve in the future. We'd like your inputs from academia, from various entities, commercial organizations, because NASA knows they cannot get to the moon and stay on the moon by themselves. This is going to take a collaborative effort with a lot of different entities." And so after that effort, we went out and got the input from the various entities. STND published 187 shortfalls. So that's a lot of shortfalls. And I think NASA realized that might be too granular a level to really be able to track and map the different technology investments in. So they actually went through and kind of went through another effort where they said, okay, we got these 187. And let's see if we can come up with the 32 top prioritized technology shortfalls to give you a much more manageable number of shortfall areas to look at. And that was something that was achieved subsequently. And it was a level of detail that provided the insights into the shortfall areas that could be best managed and be linked into the various investments. Because NASA used this, of course, to say, hey, if we've got these investments that we're making in technology development and they aren't linking into these shortfalls, then why are we making those investments? So it helped them in terms of being able to guide that development. And of course, this evaluates not just the current development efforts, but also to look at resources to really say, hey, maybe we can put more focus areas and more resources in on particular areas of influence and really focus on these investments that support these priorities that have been identified. And not just from this particular process, but we talked previously about decadal surveys, which provides priorities from the science community. They also roll those into the shortfalls as well. So this is a great way to make sure that that input, and we can refer you to our previous conversation that we had on decadal surveys, but it provides an opportunity to kind of unify the shortfalls both from decadal surveys as well as from other types of activities, and really help inspire the new investments because as you can imagine, there's only a limited budget. So how do you make sure that those investments that you're making are being applied to the priority areas that are needed to achieve NASA's different missions? So let's talk a little bit about the process when we talk about shortfalls. And it is a lot like a feedback system. So you see on the left, it says shortfalls, and these are the qualitative statements describing the inability to perform a task. So these shortfalls then actually roll into the need and opportunity statements because just because you have a shortfall doesn't mean that that's enough detail for somebody to really be able to see what's really needed. Give me a little bit more detail on that. So the need statements actually are generated by the programs based on shortfalls to say these are more details on what's really needed in a technical area, and these are the opportunities that we feel like are out there for colleges, universities, industry to help support those needs. And ultimately, the need statements are rolling into the capability goals, which says if we get these particular opportunities accomplished, then we will have these goals of these particular capabilities that would be generated. For example, when there was developing high performance onboard computing in space, that's a capability goal for one of the particular areas. So then you have the investments that go into those goals and say, okay, these are things we're doing that support these capability goals and need statements. And ultimately, you look at those investments and say, okay, year after year, how are they making progress towards those capability goals? And based on the investments and the capabilities that come out of those investments, kind of flows back as a feedback, look back to shortfalls and say, okay, we've had these investments over the last few years. We made progress, but we still have shortfalls in these areas. So those shortfalls can be adjusted over a period of time to make sure that they are still being reflective of the latest investments as well as the goals and being able to meet those goals. Just to give you an example of how these shortfalls have changed over the years, when it came out in 2024, this was the top 10 prioritized shortfall areas. And we aren't going to get in a lot of detail on these, but you can kind of see that one of the first things there was the number one priority was surviving and operating through the lunar night. And when that's a significant challenge, when you're talking about one of the NASA's first objectives is to get a human presence sustained on the moon. And the moon has these periods they call the lunar night. And unlike the lunar night here on Earth, or the night here on Earth, which is, hours, the actual lunar night can last like 2 weeks. So it's like 14 days without sun in certain areas. And those areas can reach extremely cold temperatures. So that's why the thermal management systems are key to that. And be able to survive that was considered to be like the number one priority for the agency, both for equipment, of course, and for humans to be able to survive in that type of environment. The other parts of the list we don't want to get into a lot of the detail on, but you can just see everything from high performance computing to environmental issues. And then over at 20, that's fine, April. We can go on to the next one. Yeah, as we looked at that in FY26, you can kind of see that the priorities have shifted slightly. It gives you a much more focus on things like the number one priority at this particular rank was developing infrastructure and capabilities to assets to operate to extended duration in the lunar environment. So they figured out that it wasn't just about the lunar night, but also things like dust and lunar dust and irregular, those types of things that are really critical to being able to survive. It wasn't enough just to say survive the lunar night. There was a lot more that's really needed in that. So you can see this kind of broaden the scope of the particular shortfall in 26 after being able to initially say it was focused on the lunar night. It's really much more than that. So these are the types of things. And all of these shortfalls are actually listed on the NASA public site. Uh, Dr. Ericsson will be talking later on about TechPort and how to get to that. So stay tuned to that. So we don't have to get into a lot of detail here today, but just wanted to kind of show you the type of information there. But you can see the link there for the FY26 Civil Space Shortfall Prioritization. You can click on that. That'll be part of the deck as well. And you'll be able to get more details on each of these, drilling down to multiple levels of detail that allow you to really see what's going on at NASA, some of the areas that they need help in, and see how that maps up to some of the work that's being done at your college or university.
Hey, Ken, I just wanted to mention that I actually saw a LinkedIn post today that was further pointing out that NASA needed the development for infrastructure and was heavily worded about the infrastructure. The deadline for actual that submission, that announcement of opportunity was in 2 days. So it's the 17th, but that could give you a great opportunity to look at the list of things that they're requesting and see how the calls are for upcoming opportunities to work with NASA.
That's great, great point there, April. And that's one thing that NASA does really effectively. I think is they use a lot of different means to communicate the types of things that are going on and their opportunities for others to get involved. And that's great not only for the professors and the universities, but also for the students because it shows a lot of the type of preparation that they would be needed to participate in the NASA work of the future. You can just see here, this list just continues to go on in terms of the types of things to give you a feel. But just to let you know, some of these things are wide in terms of the types of things that are associated with working with NASA. Even things like SF-30, they're reducing the likelihood and consequence of impacts with in-space objects. There are lots of things going on in our orbit around the Earth and even further out in various orbits. So that's one of the key things now is how do you make sure that you don't have impacts that are not expected with things that are going around in the Earth orbit. That's the whole sustainability piece. And being able to assure that your mission, even after you get into orbit, is going to be able to be sustained in the long term. So again, I encourage you to go out to the shortfall prioritization and look for those opportunities and really see things that would be available and that are aligned with some of the priorities from your college or university as well. With that, I'm going to turn that over to my colleague, Yulia.
Thank you, Ken. Yes, thank you for explaining the shortfall development and the whole prioritization process. I'm going to sort of step a little bit back, and as a scientist and technologist, I'm actually on the receiving side of NASA guidance, not policy development, not actually thinking through and maybe even contributing to development of shortfalls. So what I would like to spend my time here is to focus on two questions. First, does this ranking list as a whole actually point somewhere? And second, if it's not just a wish list, like a flat wish list of listing capabilities that are missing or gaps, how does the list actually lead to the missions that fly? So I'll start with the direction. And the slide that you see, I abbreviated that 32 shortfalls, just sort of make them a little bit more palatable. And I sort them, it's a ranked list, just with like a ranked number and a short description. And then when you sort it by destination, a pattern jumps out. So, of course, most of the shortfalls are agnostic to destination. Like if you look at the 2, surface mobility and logistics, or 3, onboard computing, or advanced remote sensing, this can be applied to pretty much any mission and any target in the solar system or beyond. But what I did, I highlighted in kind of grayish blue and red shortfalls that are exclusively relating to Moon or Mars. So this, I find it like very, very interesting. If you look at these 5 categories, you can see right away that that Moon, for surface operations, the Moon is number 1. Mars is number 5. EVA, which is extravehicular activities, for Moon 21 versus Mars 24. In situ resource production, in situ resource utilization, 18 versus 28. So 3 out of 4 favor Moon. The one exception is a large payload landing, which is this the number 15 versus 12, close, but they're flipped here. And that is understandable, right? Because Mars, entry, descent, and landing on Mars is genuinely harder and less solved problem. And we did land on the Moon before, so the technology is a little bit more advanced. So it's kind of the ranking reflects the width of the existing gap in technology or in the capability. So when you look at this list this way, you kind of start seeing that right now, 2026 list points to the Moon first, and Mars is to follow. So that's the direction of the question that I wanted to address. Next one, please. And the reading direction of ranking is one thing. Trusting that the ranking actually produces anything is another. And that's kind of scientist talking in me. So let me show why you can actually trust that this process. As Ken mentioned, the shortfall ranking is fairly young. So first run in 2024, then reorganized 26 list, sharpened, regrouped, and sharpened into 32 groups. So why should industry or universities reorganize around like what is pretty much changing? Well, the discipline underneath, even though the lists are young, only a few years, the discipline beneath is decades old. NASA and the national academies have been identifying their technology gaps for a very long time. That's decadal surveys that Ken mentioned, and design reference architectures, roadmaps, and et cetera, et cetera. So when they do, this kind of a repeatable chain tends to follow. And this is not a NASA view. This is my rendering of the shortfall list and how to read it. So the chain has 5 bits. There's a science or exploration question, of course, to answer, the community commits to. And also Ken mentioned decadal surveys. That's what feeds that question, or the sciences feed in the decadal survey. Then there is a gap, technology or a gap that, or shortfall that blocks it, like what we need to achieve it. Then there is a funded response. Then there's a technology that is developed and matured and possibly demonstrated. And then finally, mission enabled. So this is a trend. I want to show this trend on an example of 2 case studies, and hopefully you can see how this the system or how this process works for different type of missions. So first, this 5-bit chain that ran all the way, James Webb Telescope. The question came from 2001 astronomy. Well, actually, it came way before 2001 decadal survey, but the survey solidified the question and put a next generation infrared telescope at the top of its list. So telescope meant to see the very first stars and galaxies, and that exposed the shortfall. That's the step 1 here, or bit 1. In the 90s, nobody could build a 6.5-meter mirror that folds up for launch, unfolds in space, and holds its shape at near absolute zero, about 50 degrees Kelvin. How ready was that technology at that time? NASA rates maturity on a 9-point scale. So that's the technology readiness level. 1 is basically like a sketch on a whiteboard, relatively speaking, and 9 is a flight, like a flight. So for that, in the 90s, the maturity was TRL 3. So basically, it works on a lab bench. The state of the art at that time was Hubble, and that was like 2.5 meters of glass and at room temperature. So NASA added an interesting twist. Rather than gamble the mission on immature mirror, NASA competed it first. And there were 2 demonstrators. One called this. I hope I don't get it right. Get it wrong. So it's SBMD, a subscale beryllium mirror demonstrator, and a bigger one was AMSD, advanced mirror system demonstrator, plus a 1/6 scale working telescope to prove the entire system. So that competing thing actually moved the technology along. So by 2006, the technology readiness reached level 6, a full prototype demonstrated in space-like environment. And in January 2007, 9 of the 10 hardest technologies passed review. The last one was the mid-infrared instrument cryocooler. I don't know if Dr. Ericsson is going to talk about that or not, but that was an exciting development, and that cleared the same year in April. So hard technological problems were solved before the design was frozen. And the payoff, well, Webb launched in 21, and it's returning world-class science that it was built for. So that's this completed cycle, or completed chain. The next slide, please, is a second story and a little bit different story. Same 5 steps, same 5 bits, but it stops 1 short. The big overarching question here is, for this much smaller mission, of course, part of the mission is, can a crew land on Mars and get home? 2009 Mars reference architecture answered by building the whole mission around making propellant on Mars. That's the in situ resource utilization, because the numbers are actually, they are unforgiving. It takes about 25 tons of oxygen just to lift the crew off the surface of Mars. And a person, just one person, breathes roughly a ton a year. So you simply cannot carry that much from Earth. So NASA funded a demonstrator or technology demonstrator called MOXIE. It's a very small instrument, size of a toaster, like on the image here, you can see, and placed it on Perseverance rover as a technology demonstration. And in April 2021, it worked. It converted carbon dioxide from very thin Martian atmosphere into pure breathable oxygen and carbon monoxide byproduct. So that was the very first time a natural resource was actually been produced or harvested on another planet. Over the 2 years of its life, MOXIE made about 122 grams of oxygen. To put it in human terms, that's roughly 5 or 6 hours of breathing for one person. That sounds tiny, right? But just like I want to walk you through the numbers. It's actually not tiny. It says 2 years, 2 years of operation. In reality, and I was on Mars surface operations for Perseverance at the time. In reality, MOXIE ran over those 2 years only 16 times, and it was not allowed to run for longer than 1 hour. So total run was 16 hours. Effectively, the heating and preparing of instrument is excluded. So the actual oxygen production was 16 hours. And in 16 hours, it produced enough for a person to breathe for 5 to 6 hours. So it's not that tiny when you put it in this perspective, right? Only like factor of 3. And the point of this demonstration was never a quantity. The point was to prove that the chemistry works on Mars, and it does. So what's left is a scale. Running it continuously at something like maybe 200 times the rate to fuel a rocket. So that will be a bit 5. We are not there yet. And the open shortfall right now is Mars resource production at scale. That's exactly reflecting where this chain is going. And currently trend 28. It is of 32. It is low because it's not near term. So MOXIE is a chain. It is a four-fifth build, and we'll be waiting for its mission. Next slide, please. So this slide is basically the entire argument with one slide. 2 capabilities, same 5 bits, 2 different endings, and the telescope finished. Its mirror gap closed, and the next challenge on that path is not really continuation of the same mission, but it's a successor. It's the Habitable Worlds Observatory, which the latest decadal has already made its top priority. MOXIE opposed to step 4. But there is inheritance. There is a real item on the priorities list that will complete this. I believe it will complete this chain and actually completely close the technology gap. So the thing I want, when I was preparing the slides, I was thinking about how to convey my excitement about shortfall lists. And what I want you to take from those 2 cases is that On the surface, the shortfall list looks like a list of problems, but it really isn't. Every line on it is not just a mission that is not being able to fly yet, but it's a fairly precise map of what stands between now and the flight. So James Webb was one of those gaps, so was Moxie. So if you read this list, not as a list, even if it's prioritized list, if you read it as a map, it kind of stops being a catalog of what is missing and becomes a roadmap of all the missions to come, or different generation of missions to come. And then next natural question is how you, as a researchers, scientists, technologists, actually contribute and get in, how a company, lab, university turns one of those openings, like really opportunities, into funded work. And that's part of what Dr. Ericsson will cover, and I will pass it to her. Aprille?
Thank you. So just to mention before I turn off this slide, I will talk a little bit about the ASTRO 2020 Decadal and its highest priority, Habitable Worlds Observatory, in a few moments, as an example. So as my colleague Yulia said, she mentioned that how do these things really influence the decisions? And we've said this before, but we wanted to give a little bit more specific list of opportunities. And so with this shortfall list for civil space technology, we've already mentioned that the NASA technology investments that occur. One that we hadn't mentioned specifically was NASA SBIR, which is the Small Business and Innovative Research Programs, and the Small Business and Innovative Research Programs technology transfer opportunities. There's opportunities for the technology demonstrations. One thing that I like about technology demonstrations is that we understand that there's risk in new and innovative designs. So with the hope that they're not going to fail, but that we do understand there may be some failures or struggles in obtaining those results. And I think this allows for innovation. We're here because we're here to talk to college and universities, and so opportunities for university research is a priority for this discussion. There are opportunities for industry to do their own IRAD, which is internal research and development investments. I do like to see universities partner with industry as well in some of these activities. And then there are opportunities for public-private partnerships, and that could be public meaning government, private meaning industry, but public also meaning public-private universities. And so there are always, we really do believe in partnering at the government level. And so you'll see these opportunities quite frequently at NASA. And then there are some of the future mission architectures that you may even be familiar with. I think many of us became very familiar with the most recent Artemis mission. We've mentioned Mars, but then there are still applications to the science disciplines of earth science, astrophysics, heliophysics, and planetary science. Oh, looks like I have a dupe maybe. Okay, there we go. So there are, we highlighted also opportunities to find this information. Ken mentioned the NASA TechPort. NASA TechPort is the agency's publicly accessible database on its technology and development portfolio. That includes internal as well as external investments that the agency has made. And in this database, it contains information on more than 15,000 active or completed technology projects. And now, as I mentioned, spanning across the various centers, headquarters, our university and industry partners, as well as small businesses. And the intent and the hope is that it is this accessible database provides a transparent way to find the projects that have been developed, hopefully facilitate collaboration, continue to identify technology gaps, and then we can also support the technology infusion into NASA missions. There are 3 URLs there. I thought it was important not just to give you the tech port, but also the success stories, the impact stories that have come from the investments made, and then also to provide what we call the NASA taxonomy. It's in the tech port. There's a link, and the taxonomy gives sort of the flow down of initial science to more specific requirements of capability and needs. And I think Ken has had intimate knowledge in the development of that 2024 taxonomy. We've not yet seen it updated. And I think, but it's a really great list and a great place to find where your niche might be in the research that you are currently working on. In addition, we've also spoke quite a bit about what are shortfalls and how they have an impact. But there's also a link here to provide you with the civil space shortfall list. So it was mentioned how this can be impactful, but we really are outlining with the different partners with small business, what areas they could align to, particularly thinking of the SBIR or SBIR and STTR proposal opportunities. Universities can look and utilize the tech board to maybe find research opportunities that align with their research portfolio, but also potentially collaborators. This may give you some ideas of maybe something that you've been trying to solve, or you can see that there's a gap and maybe there's a way to connect subsystems together to create the larger systems that are necessary for some of these missions. And I think it's an actual opportunity to utilize the tech port for that. Of course, large aerospace companies, and we find that the larger companies sometimes will partner with the smaller businesses, again, utilizing that smaller subsystem or widget to provide them with the right component for something that they're already developing. But they often really help them to understand the long-term technology investment strategy. We also have seen quite a bit of collaboration with government agencies. So not just NASA, but the Department of Defense, particularly with the Air Force or Space Force, Department of Energy, and many other government agencies will collaborate in helping to provide solutions. We also hope that this will help us to avoid duplication in any of the tech development areas. And then there are many researchers. TRLs were mentioned, technology areas, some of the NASA centers. It's very important to also look at what concentration capability happens at the various centers. And then the mission directors that often will partition or put out the announcement of our opportunities and provide the funding. So great resource. I just noticed too that in my listing of TechPort and some of the missions, it's actually several of the missions that I worked on. And so I'm going to move into a more specific opportunity that shows you how you might find the information that you need. I thought I'd start off with science. You know, science was one of my wonderful partners as an engineer. And in this case, it says, what exists? Okay, thinking of the big question, right? That age-old question that humanity is often driven by this quest to know the world around us. And I would really say, know the universe around us. I do look up the night sky, right? Many stars, and we know that there are worlds orbiting them. We've been able to discover that through surveys, and here are 2 missions that are listed, Kepler and TESS missions, which use a transient method to find exoplanets. They've been able to detect thousands of planets, but they have some missing capabilities. They cannot detect or measure planet habitability, or and with the added nuance of an orbiting star nearby. So if we are to fulfill that need to have a better understanding or find exoplanets that fall into the Goldilocks area of habitability for people like ourselves, humans, creatures like ourselves, we need to develop new technologies, hopefully building on the past technologies and the heritage and achievements of that past technologies. And so listed here is the civil space shortfall number 13, which is perform advanced remote sensing and science measurements with improved sensing capabilities and autonomy. Of course, then you see the 9 other listed under that need ID that falls into that category. And then I specifically outlined one that is directly relevant here, which is to detect biosignatures at exoplanets. I wanted to give you a firm example. I mentioned Habitable Worlds Observatory that was on Yulia's side earlier. Um, Understanding that the heritage that was created, James Webb, ISAT-2, those are missions that have helped to implement these beryllium mirrors that were shown previously. As you can see, as we move towards larger missions in the future, the Hubble, soon to, we mentioned James Webb, but soon to be in implementation is the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. It is now this next step or piece in the puzzle as we move towards HWO. And so NASA draws on those lessons with extensive experience. They also utilize the list, the critical shortfalls list, or add to that list through the things that they observe as they develop some of the projects or reports that are developed. And in this case, there have been some missions that have been designed. There's the Astrofocus Atlas mission and then LUVAR, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner, the LUVAR mission. The concept actually has a larger configuration than the James Webb, but very similar in the segmented mirrors that unfold into that Cassegrain mirror that you see, Cassegrain telescope that you see with a rolled out flexible but taut sunshade. If you look down to the lower left-hand corner of the screen, I love this concept because it reminds me of origami. I actually helped one of our scientists with a TRL development where we did a folded up version of this, and it was during COVID, so she had to take things home and practice. But I was one of the supporters to help get it funded so that she could come up with a small scale version of what you see in those 2 pictures. So you see the mirror deploying as it unfolds. It has the flower petals that first unfold and then the inner side that eventually stretches out to the circular look that you see there. The star shade is very important when doing choreography type of measurements. This particular one with the exoplanet probe was led by JPL, and they also correspondingly worked with Goddard on the HABEX concept, and so there's kind of these mirroring of opportunities that led to key recommendations, that were done during the 2020 and helped to drive these as potential concepts in the future. And you can see the timeline there of hoping that the launch might happen in the first half of the 2040s, so some time off. So again, revisiting how colleges and universities could play a part. There are opportunities to secure funding for future tech development through grants and contracts. I've already mentioned the Small Business and Innovative Research Program, but the one that's specifically focused towards college and universities is the STTR program, which is SBIR Technology Transfer. And it requires that a good portion of the work goes directly to the university working in partnership with the small business. There are opportunities for student challenges as well and Space Act agreements that could be entered into agreement between the centers or headquarters Hopefully the shortfall list can help to inform colleges as well on what they may to enter or add to their curriculum or their programs for universities, maybe even potential, as I mentioned, student competitions or challenges as we outlined. And then with the things that the university learns and faculty learn, they can actually give feedback to NASA on the relevant work that they're doing on the campus or anything that we might need to do in terms of adjustments for the future. So what we've basically covered in summary is really providing the approach, how collected data, receiving feedback from top level scientists and engineers and policymakers, really also utilizing this methodology to really boil down and prioritize 32 civil space shortfalls. The insight for STMD's priorities really help the agency to align with technology developments, but also industry, and I would say the STEM ecosystem in general that support many of the NASA missions. We realize that these priorities for the aerospace community, the science community, is really a snapshot in time. So as the agency objectives, architects, and missions evolve, you might imagine that the priorities should also evolve with them. STMD has said that they would like to assess and update these shortfalls, the need statements, every 3 years. This will help to inform their investment strategy. And then lastly, if there are major shifts or complications or possibly aha moments, that the objectives and guidance will be incorporated as required and adjustments can be made. There's a link at the bottom. So if you want to look more information on shortfalls, the past, present, or future, please visit that website. I ask my colleagues to join in if they have any additional remarks or something they want to add.
I think you did a great job, Aprille. As we have
Thank
here the different QR codes just for our QEM events page and Heroes web page and our webinar feedback. We'd love to get your feedback on not just this particular webinar, but others in the future. So I guess, are we open for questions now, Christine?
We are open for questions, and we have one in the Q&A from James Cribb. Is there a good, effective way to get direct connections with NASA scientists for collaboration?
Yes, I'll start things off. First of all, of course, is to go to NASA has so many different programs and projects. So you need to find the ones that are most aligned with the work that you're interested in doing. And you go out to nasa.gov and just drill down to those particular programs. And then you can look at things like the TechPort sites to search on individual projects and work that's going on. And a lot of the work has principal investigators, someone who's actually listed. And they usually have contact information associated with those people, and you can actually reach out to them through an email. And you'd be surprised at how often, especially when you put a little bit about what you're doing in there, you have something going on with a special program that you think is aligned with NASA achieving those missions, they really are interested in trying to get more information about that. The other thing you can do is be looking out for opportunities that comes out, because just like we mentioned here, the shortfalls list that was sent out, actually NASA opened up to the general public, universities, colleges, and said, hey, if you have ideas, reach out to us, or questions, or if this looks like it needs to be changed in terms of the way we're wording. So look for ways to interface with NASA in those particular opportunities that come up. And one more thing I'll say before I turn it over to my colleagues is use your students, because a lot of times the student programs have opportunities where you can get your students into those programs, and you'd be surprised at the relationships they can build as a student that can also link back to your programs at your college and university.
There are maybe just a few other ways that I would suggest too. I know that the question was about NASA personnel, but I think that the academic researchers also offer opportunities that may have projects that are focusing, and if you're able to combine with them and work together, that united front is really very successful in getting funding. NASA loves to see partnerships. They love to see opportunities for subsystems to work together. There are opportunities to even incorporate former successful components from software to small technical devices. If you're able to show that you can interface to those devices and grow upon it, that often will get the attention of others. I also thought of something that was developed, and NASA also partnered with NSF to create NSF Includes, which is a community of researchers and list of opportunities to work with others. NASA also has a NASA Includes program as well. So there are ways to meet people in the community that like-minded.
Yes, thank you. I'll also add a little bit. This is exactly it. Aprille pointed at NASA scientists. Most actually of NASA-funded scientists or research are not civil servants. They're not at NASA. They're at the universities. They're at NASA centers, but they're not like NASA as an employees. So every single NASA center, at least currently, has I think it calls like University Partnership Office. And that office actually, the explicit purpose of it is fostering and developing the relationships with other universities, with other researchers, universities between university to university, and so forth. So that would be one. And do not underestimate the power of cold call or email. Direct contact. Find a researcher in your area of expertise or an area where you think where collaboration would be fruitful or you can contribute, give them a call. So that's this is probably probably one of the most undervalued resources, at least from my experience. I think this is all that I wanted to add.
I'll put as the military say, I'll boot stomp that because I would get cold emails all the time, or people would drop things in my LinkedIn box. And I'm talking about, as you know, my 30 plus years at NASA, you get a lot of emails and even snail mail from people that don't really know you. And some of them are really great opportunities to further the capabilities and the needs that we have at our centers or in our missions. I will again say too, the growing trend at NASA headquarters was actually to diversify the principal investigator pool so that it wasn't so heavily dominated by NASA civil servants, but to actually grow that pool and include more and more faculty. So you see a much more diverse groups. And when we say principal investigators, we're saying the science team or the head person who is really the head honcho in terms of the missions. So it'd be great to look at more than just NASA civil servants. Now, if you are stuck in my former role, and I heard Yulia say it as well, and probably Ken would have been the right person, you'd reach out to the technologists who typically know where you might want to make that connection. So if you look up somebody who has that title, then you could ask them, hey, could you steer me in the right direction, and drop them an email, and they should also be able to help.
That's great. And I'll just add one more thing. We did a previous talk, one of the webinars on Space Act agreements. And so that's another resource for you. You can just look up NASA Space Act agreements, and it's a way where you can see the different work that's going on in different areas at NASA and who these agreements are already in place with. A lot of colleges and universities are already in that particular arena, and NASA's kind of bound by regulations to open it up to others in that same arena, because you can't be exclusive unless it's an exclusive SAA, and most of them are not. So it gives you a way to kind of get into the NASA relationships, just looking at agreements that are even already in place. And then if you have something aligned with those, you can either partner with another university or reach out directly to the people at NASA who are work with that particular Space Act agreement.
Wanted to mention that charts, and Christine will probably mention about charts, but there are backup charts. We did include all of the 32 with a more of a description, and so that you had the full list of in the charts. But we do suggest you visit the website links that we provided as well.
And as Dr. Ericsson mentioned, these slides will be in the QEM Resource Hub. You should, if you have not attended one of our webinars in the past, you should receive an invitation to access the Resource Hub, where you can find, soon you will be able to find the recording of this webinar as well as the slides for your reference. And in the interest of time, I wanted to say thank you so much for attending today. This was a brilliant talk, very informative, and we really appreciate our Heroes Fellows bringing this information forward. And as Ken mentioned, there are 3 QR codes on this slide. One takes you to the events page, one to the Heroes Fellows webpage, and another to the webinar feedback form. And can people share these resources for people who are not registered with QEM? Our system requires you to be a QEM network member, but you will be added automatically into that network and receive an invitation to access these resources soon. And with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone who attended today, and we hope to see you at a future webinar. Thank you very much.